Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes, and today is Monday, October 25th, 2021. I'm your host for the first hour, and today we celebrate the 298th day of the year, so in a bit we'll be doing the Course in Miracles Workbook Lesson 298. But as far as an intro for this show, we're here to help people learn and practice some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever discovered in my 47 years of doing therapy work. And these tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that website, click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner. It will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 17 years to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative experience of emotions into part of the infallible guidance system that each one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. And copy it, use it as often as you'd like. We encourage people to do that soon and often because it often leads to testimonials or questions. And then we've got a call-in number that you can call, 563-999-3581. Call that number and press 1 and we can have a conversation. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have actually been stepped through that worksheet process, or people have been calling in to give testimonials about how well the application of that tool has improved their lives, and or they've discussed some of the dynamics that allow such a deceptively simple process or tool to be so powerful in the improvement of my life and relationships and in the clarification of this guidance system, our emotional guidance system. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness and get access to a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon-Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. So today is our, as I mentioned, it's the 298th day of the year, and today's Course in Miracles lesson simply reads, I love you, Creator, and I love your offspring. The commentary reads, my gratitude permits my love to be accepted without fear, and thus I am restored to my reality at last. All that intruded on my holy sight, forgiveness takes away, and I draw near the end of my senseless journeys, my mad careers, and my artificial values. I accept instead what the Creator establishes as mine, and I am sure that in that alone I will be saved. I am sure that I go through fear to meet actual love. Father, I come to you today because I would not follow any way but yours. You are beside me. Certain is your way. And I am grateful for your holy gifts of certain sanctuary and escape from everything that would obscure my love for my Creator and for the Creator's offspring. Pam Grout, in her Course in Miracles experiment book, Lesson 298, is titled, Falling Off My Unicorn. She quotes Dostoevsky as saying, "A new world is what people fear most." And Pam writes, "Our strict adherence to conventional reality precludes us from recognizing miracles that are happening all around us. Lesson 298 promises a return to reality and an end to all that intrudes on my holy sight. Who in their right mind walks into a restaurant, takes a look at the menu, and orders the dish that they least desire? Likewise, who would go shopping at Nordstrom and opt to carry out the rack's ugliest outfit and take it to the sales counter? Yep, that's what most of us do in our thinking and in our conversations. We focus on things we don't want to happen. We focus on the fear, on the negative, on the lack. Decisions have a much bigger impact on your life than one ugly dress or a dish you can't stand. You literally get exactly what you order from the universe. It's an unalterable law. Sure, I can habitually return to the worn-out groove of death and its many minions, sadness, fear, anxiety, doubt, anger, etc. Or I can march my happy little body right up to the universal counter and order what is truly mine, being unfettered and wildly alive. So let's march right up to the counter and order what is ours, being completely unfettered and wildly alive. And one of the ways we do that in this work is we stay very closely tuned into how we're feeling moment to moment. And whenever we experience a negative emotional state, we use that as a guidance system. We use that as an alarm system to help wake us up to the fact that in that moment, when I have any negative emotion going, I have chosen in error. I am thinking off the mark. And with the willingness to make a course correction, things start to begin to change dramatically for my better. I perceive things more accurately when I'm coming from that space of calm, that space of compassion, that space of appreciation. Some would call it love. And once I'm perceiving things more accurately, the decisions I make lead to improved situations in my life. So that's what we're encouraging people to do soon and often. Use the reality management worksheet to educate us about where and when we can make a course correction so that our perception yields a better, more accurate picture of actuality. So our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. What is on your mind today? How would it serve you for us to use this next 48 minutes? I've had a number of people I've worked with over the past week who are coming at in different times and ways to different realization that they have become codependent with another person. They have somehow or another mistakenly arrived at the conclusion that their strength is not really theirs, that they need somebody else to make a good decision or to get productive work done or to be able to trust their own judgment. They need outside verification. And in that process, they end up hiding their power. They either blame somebody else for their pain or give somebody else credit for their success. And in that process, they hide from themselves their own considerable autonomy and good judgment. And the fact that they have the ability to tap into the same creative force, the same insight, intuition, higher mind that everybody who's ever lived has had. And while it's a real stretch for some people, it is possible to learn to reverse that process. It is possible to learn to trust your own connection to a higher wisdom. Some would call it to the divine, some would call it to the unconscious, some would call it to the great comforter. And the more we use tools like the reality management worksheet or the 3 early memories of conflict or the mind shifter targeted journaling tool, the more we get access to the realization that our own judgment is just fine, that our own access to a higher wisdom and judgment is every bit as productive and reliable and worthy as the people that we've put on a pedestal. So please, whether you pick up these tools or not, please learn to question anyone you have put on a pedestal. Please learn to observe for yourself the truth of our lives is that we're all the same. And that the healthiest people that you'll ever encounter are that healthy because they've come to realize we're all the same. They aren't healthier because they possess more intelligence or wisdom. They aren't healthier because they have more possessions. The healthiest people you'll ever run into are healthier because they have the understanding that the only significant difference between them and anybody else who's ever lived or ever will live on this planet is the degree to which they're able to live in the realization that we are all the same. And once that happens, when I wake up and recognize I have somehow or another either been trained or conditioned or fallen into the pattern of putting someone else on a pedestal, one of the most important things for me to do is change that perspective. One way or another, come to see that that person and I have so much more in common than we ever have that is disparate. And that when I learn to use tools that remove my anger and fear and sadness, when I learn to understand the ways in which I'm misapplying mind energy that's creating those negative emotions, then my perception clears, and what I choose is every bit as valid, valuable, and worth applying in my life as the best advice I would ever get from anybody else. So, if I could, I would have it be national or international, take somebody off a pedestal day, at least one day a week. So if you got somebody on a pedestal and you don't know how to get out of that perspective, give us a call. Let's talk about it. 563-999-3581. Who do you know? Who do you have on a pedestal in your life? And what would it take for you to be willing to end that hallucination, that distortion of actuality that allows you to perceive them as somehow having more value than you? Whether it's a parent or a guru or somebody who's somehow, has more possessions, money, homes, cars, relationships, whoever it is that you have on a pedestal, the invitation for today's show is question that deeply and profoundly. Come to view that as an error in perception or an error in conclusions or belief that is being driven by faulty perception on your part. The actuality of our lives is that the only significant difference from one person to the other is the degree to which an individual is able to live in the realization that we are all the same. Everybody's got certain things that they're better at and certain things that they struggle with. Everybody has the same inherent value from the Creator. Hard to believe, but it's true. Absolutely true. And when you get into that position where you have the realization, life starts to improve by leaps and bounds. The more you can release any hero worship or, positioning of a person onto a pedestal, the better your own life will get. And the sooner you do it, the better. There's no such thing as arriving there too soon, to that position of clarity. I have had a while here where I've been talking about the 15 commitments of conscious leadership. And the last one we were talking about is appreciation. So we've gotten to the seventh one. The first one is, I commit to taking full responsibility for the circumstances of my life. The second one is, I commit to growing in self-awareness. The third one is, I commit to feeling all of my feelings all the way through to completion. The fourth one is, I commit to saying what is true for me, and this is a commitment of candor, which is deep, broad-ranging honesty, and to be someone that others can be honest and open with. The fifth one is, I commit to ending gossip, and I do that by choosing to talk directly with anybody that I have an issue with or a concern with. The sixth one is, I commit to the masterful practice of integrity, which includes being very open and honest whenever I'm not going to be able to live up to a commitment. And they offer a clearing process for that. The seventh one is, I commit to living in appreciation, fully opening to being able to express and receive appreciation. And we talked about that and how awkward it is for so many people in our culture because they've got some misguided sense that accepting the good about you and receiving a compliment or allowing someone to express their appreciation for you is somehow unhealthy or selfish, or it means you've got a big head. And there are entire cultures, and Michael and Jeannie have talked about this, where the culture has as a cultural bias the idea of not letting yourself be a tall poppy or stand out from anybody else or think you're better in any way, whether it's a skill or an intelligence factor. And in those cultures, there's a tremendous, let's call it a tremendously strong bias against allowing someone to see the strength that you have or any of your ultimate skills for whatever reason, because it would be, it's a taboo in that culture. And so you'll actually get negative feedback from people, despite the fact that when you're able to give and receive appreciation, you're healthier and you're conscious. The eighth commitment is a little bit more of a challenge for a lot of people. And this eighth commitment says, I commit to expressing my full magnificence and to supporting and inspiring others to fully express their creativity and supporting others in living in their zone of genius. Now, this is quite the challenge for a lot of people, because when people make a choice, they make a conscious choice to spend less time doing things they're not so good at and more time doing things that are in their zone of genius, then sometimes they're looked upon and judged as being haughty or too good for their own britches or all kinds of other negative judgments. When in truth, the bottom line is it's just about efficiency. It's about committing to spend more of my time doing the things that I'm just naturally good at. And in one way, this is very much in alignment with Dr. Michael Rice's, has a lecture titled Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment. And in that lecture, he proposes a tool. And the tool is called the Secondary Purpose Worksheet. And like so many of his other tools, this is available absolutely free. If you go to whyagain.org, click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner. And when you get to that page, just start scrolling down, and you scroll down past all kinds of worksheets until you see the one that says, I believe it says Secondary Purpose. I'm trying to pull it up right now so I get the actual title for you. And you start filling that out, and when you do, you're going to highlight things that you're naturally good at and things that you just absolutely love to do. And when you get that tool filled out, then you end up writing a narrative description of how the world will look through your eyes when it's perfect. So it's called the Purpose Worksheet. And it's a worksheet to help you get specific about your secondary purpose. And the reason they don't have a worksheet for your primary purpose is because in Michael's work, the idea is our primary purpose is the same for every human being. And that is to develop and then strengthen a viable, conscious spiritual body. So then if you download the Purpose Worksheet and you start getting specific about 10 things that you just absolutely love to do and 10 things you're just naturally good at. And with this work, it's completely irrelevant whether there's any commercial value in these things that you're good at or in these things that you absolutely love to do. But the end result of that worksheet is you decide what your secondary purpose is, and then you can start using it day in and day out as a way of focusing your energy. So any day that you get up and you are faced with a choice about doing anything that was going to consume any appreciable amount of your time, intelligence, money, and energy, you compare that activity that you're about to do with your secondary purpose. And if it will distract you from doing your secondary purpose or block you from doing your secondary purpose or take in any way inhibit your ability to pursue your secondary purpose today, you just don't do it. And in that way, my eye and ear says, this is very much like learning to live in your zone of genius. You just don't do a lot of the things that you would normally do if you were not focused, because you want to save your resources, your time, intelligence, money, and energy, to be available for you to pursue this secondary purpose. So they talk about these 4 areas. The incompetent area is what I consistently do and I get negative feedback about in my work. Or what I do at my work that just about everybody there can do better than me. And we've all got those kinds of things. I've yet to meet the person who was excellent at everything. And then there's the zone of competence. And in that zone, this is the work that I do and others can do just as well or better. But I do a passable job on it. And then there's the excellent area. Or in the competence area, it's the work that I do, and I do it well, but it doesn't really feel satisfying to me. I'm good at it, but I don't really enjoy it. I'm not satisfied by it. And then there's the area of excellence. And in the area of excellence, it's what I do consistently and I get positive feedback about in my work and my life. And it's what I do that's just about better than almost anybody else around me. And the last zone is the zone of genius. And in that zone, it's the work that I do, and I love doing it so much that it doesn't seem like work. And this asks me to look at what aspects of my work generate the highest ratio of positive results compared to the time spent. And that's how I determine whether I'm living in my zone of excellence or I'm living in my zone of incompetence or, genius rather than incompetence, competence, or excellence. And as you can see, there isn't anything actually wrong with any of these. I mean, everybody ends up doing some things that they're not the world's best at in their work. Everybody ends up doing quite a few things that they're pretty good at, but basically all kinds of other people at their work are good at those things too. But what they're asking us to do in this work is to look at the zone of excellence. It's the trickiest one of genius. It's the trickiest one because excellence is right next to it. And this is where I'm really, really good at doing it, probably better than anybody else in my work area. And yet, it doesn't light me up. It still feels like work. And when I find my area of excellence, if I don't stop and I keep looking, I will probably find there's an area of genius above it. And sometimes, if I'm identified with the work and all the praise I get because I'm doing things from my area of competence or area of excellence, sometimes there's a pull for me to stay there for the feedback and the positive feedback and the praise that I get. And what they're suggesting is there's an upper limit. And typically there's a fear we have to overcome moving from the zone of excellence to the zone of genius. Questions pop up in people's heads like, well, who are you to live in your zone of genius? Right? You're not that special. And if you decide to live more from your zone of genius, it means letting other people or hiring other people to do things that you're actually capable of doing. It's just not in your zone of genius, and so it's not as efficient, and it doesn't fill you with the joy of life. And so, sometimes people might look at you as, oh, so you're too good to, clean your own toilets, or you're too good to drive your own car. And so you have to face the attachment that you have to the way other people think about you or relate to you. And unless you're independently wealthy, you can't just hire somebody to do everything that isn't in your zone of genius. So it means working bit by bit to shift the focus more over to those things that are in your zone of genius. And they understand that that's where most of us live. We live in playing it safe. We live in our zone of competence or our zone of excellence, and we don't move into our zone of genius. Gay and Catherine Hendricks talk about some of the categories of false beliefs that keep us from moving into our zone of genius, and they call them the upper limits problem. The big idea is that each one of us has a gauge, kind of like a thermostat, that measures how good things are, with a limit that is just shy of too good to be true for me. We have a limit for different areas of our lives, how much money we're allowed to make, how much love or closeness we can feel, how much joy we can experience, how much fun we're allowed to have. Everyone's upper limits vary, which is why commissioned salespeople seem to top out at such different numbers. What seems consistent, though, is that when people bump into that upper limit, something happens that helps bring them back down to the level where they feel safe and comfortable. These aren't conscious decisions. We didn't sit down with our coffee this morning and make a deal with ourselves to hold our upper limits in place. But at the same time, notice all the phrases we have in our society that are directly related to this upper limit theory they have. That's too good to be true. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Well, what goes up must come down. Well, the tallest poppy gets cut, so don't be a tall poppy. Well, you get what you pay for. Well, you can't have it all. They point out that fear guards the line between the zone of excellence and the ultimate zone of genius. No wonder people don't expand into their zone of genius, because the amount of ease, fun, creativity, and life force often seems to be too much. We have societal blocks to this. They list the 4 top false beliefs that trigger an upper limits problem. People fundamentally feel flawed. People feel that if they move into their level of genius, they will be disloyal and they will be abandoning others, or they will get abandoned. People think that if I have more success, there's going to be a bigger burden. People feel that they're going to be outshining those around them, someone important to them, and that they would be making somebody else look bad or feel bad if they lived in their zone of excellence. Their zone of genius. So, the same kind of thing happens, and a lot of people have the same kinds of reactions to Dr. Michael Rice's purpose, personal power, and commitment, and the purpose worksheet, because a lot of the same negative thoughts about self or fear of outshining other people rise to the top when people think about creating a secondary purpose that's based on helping the world become perfect. And who am I to try and help the world be perfect? Who am I to focus just on the things that I'm just naturally good at, or the things that I love to do? It's not a good or healthy thing to just focus on what I love to do. I should focus on what I was taught to do and what people tell me is a good job. And however, my personal experience has been that when you fill out the purpose, personal power, and commitment secondary purpose worksheet, you open a space for your life to start getting better by leaps and bounds. And you open a space for that to happen in ways that you could never imagine, and in ways that if you were just relying on your own conscious time, intelligence, money, and energy, you wouldn't get there anyway. But what we know is that when we move forward with confidence in the direction of our dreams, all manner of unseen, powerful support gets mobilized. And little coincidences, what Jung would call synchronicity, some people call them miracles, begin to happen if we just take action in the direction of our dreams, in the direction of our genius, in the direction of our well-defined secondary purpose. And Dr. Michael Rice talks quite well in his lecture on purpose, personal power, and commitment about the value of a tool like this that helps us focus our energy. Imagine how it is that you can be outside on a day where it's 95 degrees in the sun on a summer day, and you can be out there for an hour and not get sunburned, not get pain generated in your skin. But if you take just a 3-inch circle, 3 inches worth of that light that's hitting your skin, and focus it down to a tiny beam, a pinpoint like you can do with a magnifying glass, that same light that's been on your skin for an hour without causing any pain will burn right through a leaf or a twig. It'll burn wood. Why? Because it's focused energy. And the efficiency and the power that comes from focusing our energy goes way beyond words. So even if there wasn't something from the unseen forces that help light our way and move obstructions for us, even if that wasn't there, just the idea of focusing would create better results. But we also know that there's a world of connection and energy that gets mobilized to help us achieve our goals once we move confidently in the direction of our goals. So it's not even just up to us. We get support. We get, some would call them, angels, spirit guides, synchronicities, miracles, and that's beyond words powerful. If you can step into the use of a tool like the secondary purpose, if you can overcome some of your fears about being more wildly successful than you ever imagined, or standing up taller than somebody else, or your fears about making somebody else look bad because you're so effective, then you can step into the use of a tool like your secondary purpose, and you will be amazed at the changes in your life, often in ways that you could never have imagined. Your life will begin to unfold differently. You'll start to see synchronicities, coincidences, little miracles. And to my eye and ear, it's exactly the same process as the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, where it talks about learning to live in your zone of genius. So that's our offering. We are welcoming comments, questions, answers, soliloquies. Our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. How does it strike you? 2 different topics so far today. One is identifying and dismantling any tendency you have to put someone on a pedestal, and doing whatever you can to grow in the realization that the only significant difference between you and anybody else who's ever lived is the degree to which you're able to realize and live in the realization that we're all the same. And then the idea of living in your zone of genius, being willing to pick up a tool like Michael Rice's secondary purpose worksheet, available absolutely free, and apply it in your life and watch the changes that happen. 563-999-3581. Press 1. Let's have a conversation. What's on your mind relative to those 2 topics or anything else you've heard in the past 10.5 years on Mind Shifters Radio. Today's a Monday, so we don't have a support group to offer, but tomorrow and Thursday we have Mind Shifter support groups available, absolutely free, from 6:30 to 9 p.m. Central Time. The information on how to join us there is available at mindshiftersacademy.org website. And please remember, if you're going there to check that out, it's a separate login information for Tuesday and a separate one for Thursday. So, 563-999-3581. Tomorrow we'll go a little further with our 15 commitments of conscious leadership. You can gear up for that. The 9th commitment is the commitment to creating a life of play. And again, that goes right in line with Dr. Michael Rice's purpose worksheet, because he has us list things that we are naturally good at and list things that we absolutely love to do. And the idea is this life that you're living, this gift of life, has in it the potential, if we do what the Course in Miracles lesson today calls us to do, and what the Pam Grout Falling Off My Unicorn lesson encourages us to do. If we focus on what we want, if we walk up to the counter, the universal counter, and put in our order for being truly unfettered and wildly alive, we will get the joyful, expansive experience of life that only we can create. And if we buy into what has been conditioned into us from the ages and our families, it pretty much tells us to go into the store or go into the restaurant and pick the item that is least delicious or tasteful or to our tastes from the menu and order that, or go into the Nordstrom rack and find the ugliest outfit we can find and take it to the counter. When we focus on what we don't want, we get more of what we don't want. When we focus on what we want, when we focus on joy and aliveness and appreciation and gratitude, we get more of the things in life that resonate with us, that same energy of joy, appreciation, and gratitude. So when you're looking at the purpose worksheet, half of it is, what are the things that I absolutely love to do? And I weave that into my secondary purpose. So I'm not just doing the things I'm naturally good at. And this is another overlap between this and the 15 commitments of conscious leadership, because they talk about the zone of incompetence, the zone of competence, the zone of excellence. Well, the zone of excellence are these things I'm just really, really good at doing. And I might be better at them than anybody else at my workplace. But they're not asking us in that commitment to live in that zone of excellence. They're asking us to move into the zone of genius. And the difference between the zone of excellence and the zone of genius has to do with my joy at doing this thing in my zone of genius. It makes it so it doesn't feel like I'm working. It makes it so that time disappears. It's the thing that I do where I feel most energized and happy. And I blend that into my secondary purpose. I find ways to move more of the time in my day and my week into doing things that are in that zone of genius for me, that are so highly productive and things that I just love to do. The time seems to disappear, and joy is the experience. And that's exactly what the Course in Miracles lesson today is asking us to do, and it's exactly what Michael Rice's Purpose Worksheet will guide us to do. Find those things that you're naturally good at and those things that you absolutely love to do, and create a life purpose. Create a way in which you're going to help the world become perfect in your eyes through the utilization of those very activities, or engaging in those very activities. Just imagine if you could put together a life that has you engaging more and more in the things that light you up and make you lose your sense of time and feel just ecstatic joy, and that you could do that more and more often throughout your day. And that in the process of doing that, the world you're living in gets to be a better place. It is not a pipe dream. It's an actuality that's available. They know it in the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, and they know it in the lecture Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment by Dr. Michael Rice. And it's built into the Purpose Worksheet, which is available absolutely free on the website at whyagain.org. Click on the Start Here link in the upper left-hand corner, and then just scroll down until you see the heading titled Purpose Worksheet. And once there, print it off, fill it out, and then call us if you have any questions. That's why we're here 5 days a week, currently 2 hours a day, to entertain those comments and questions and help you live the kind of life that has more joy in it and helps the world at large be a better place. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I usually try and hand it over to Jeannie at the 2-minute left mark, so that would give us 3 minutes. What's on your mind? What's a comment? What's a question? What's an answer? What's a suggested topic for future talks? What is the favorite book you've read recently that you'd like to have us review, or invite the interviewer to do to the author to do an interview? I have a call out to several people to try and get them to do an interview, and I've had a couple rejections recently because people are just too busy. Psychologists specifically. They have so many people that are coming to see them, mostly because of the additional stress brought on by coronavirus restrictions and loss of job and homeschooling or remote schooling that's put a dent in people's grade point averages and self-esteem. So if you have a favorite author or a podcast that you listen to, call us and give us the suggestions, 563-999-3581 and press 1, or send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. And the process will begin, and I will reach out to them and see if we can't secure an interview. In the meantime, Michael and Jeannie should be here for another hour, beginning very shortly, and we'll be here all week long to entertain your comments and your questions, and or finish reviewing the 15 commitments of conscious leadership. And in the meantime, I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Welcome, Jeannie Rice.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Appreciate you.
You're most welcome and deserving. Yes, have a wonderful show.
Thank you.